is it? It's, we call it an affliction, okay? It's not, nothing's always anything, okay? Don't get into that corner, okay? But it can be schizophrenic if it's the sun moon opposed. It's the conscious subconscious mind at war with one another. It can be total enlightenment, like a full moon. Wow, you know, that person is able to look right into their own soul and see themselves with purity. So it's not always anything. But, and Ed got that real clear this week. He kind of came, he called me, he was so excited because he started to see this, that it's not all about bad and good. You know, it's about understanding the energies. Right. And this is why I want you to start working. I'm going to start grilling you each time you come. So we get this in our soul. We understand it as a feeling thing. So when I say to you, what is Mars square opposition? Or maybe it's semi-square. That's 45 degrees, half of a 90-degree aspect. It's considered a discordant aspect, okay? So Mars square moon, help me and understand what, you're looking at a person's chart. They just sat down, you did their chart, and you see Mars squaring the moon. What do you think that's going to mean? Who, what?
Very emotional and moody. Maybe a
lunatic.
Maybe. But think about...
It's a person that is controlled by emotion.
Well, here's the thing. That's more like... Quick temper. Good, good. If they're emotionally aroused. Good. You see the difference? Huh? Good for you. Good for you. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. There's problems with the mother. I went to a...
Oh, because the mother's the moon.
Yeah, the moon is the mother. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I went to a country club here one day for something. I thought what I was there for. You were with me, I think, and the woman was sitting there. She was the program director there or something, and something came up. She said, "Oh, we do my chart or something." I said, "I take a quick look at your chart," and I told her, I said, "You know, you'll never have peace, or you'll never have anything good with your mother. Everything's bad with your mom." She said, "My God." She said, "I keep trying to make peace with her. It's impossible." I said, "You never will." She said, "How could you know that?" She says, "We just are always not speaking to each other. And every time I try to get it together again, it's always the same thing." Do you remember that woman? And it was like she blew it out. I mean, this is just a quick look at my iPad, and I saw that moon afflicting Mars. And there's a lot of anger there. Why? Anger towards the moon, the mother.
I have a moon afflicted Mars.
You do?
I don't know.
Do you have let me see your chart.
With my mom.
Let me look at your chart. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay. Where did I put my glasses? Yeah. Okay. Is this still working? This thing work still? Okay, nothing's turned off? Okay, let's see what I got. All right. Well, you're born on a new moon. You have the moon and sun together, 22, and 24. The moon is at 24 of Leo, and your sun is at 27. 22 Leo. They're 2 degrees apart. You're born on a new moon. But let me see what's going on. See, here's an interesting thing. Remember, how do we find the mother? Tell me, how do we find the mother? Moon, what else do we do to look for the mother? Fourth house, right? And what else do we look at? Help me, you're almost there. 3 things, always. Good, who said Cancer? Amen. Okay. So, we're going to look for those 3 things. You're not going to always look for the square, okay? And in her case, she has Mars in Cancer. Rules the mother. I didn't have to look for a square. You see what I'm getting at? Got it? Got it? And it's in the 8th house, so that means that she would always want to have control over monies. Anything to do with investment, anything, spending money, she would always control you.
Everything was about money.
Yeah, because it's in the 8th house. That's other people's money, by the way. You know, like she's always got her nose in other people's money and wanting to control it. Because Mars is there, so she's always finding fault with other people the way they spend their money. You see what I'm saying? Because that's the 8th house. 2nd house is your money. Eighth house is the opposite. That's other people's money, because you got to remember something. If the first house is you, the seventh is opposed to that, right? That's the other person, right? Right?
Okay.
That's our mate, it's our relationship, okay? So if the seventh is, think of it as the first, what is the second to the seventh? It'd be the eighth. So it's other people's money, the eighth house. You see it? See, the first thing you look at this chart, and it's conjunct Uranus. So conjunct Uranus. So there would have been arguments about your friends even. You see, with her. Any relationships you have, she would tend to be judgmental about. Am I right?
No one was good enough.
Nobody. Because that's Uranus rules friends and her life, okay, and her people that she finds and wants to be with. And then that energy is angry all the time. So yes, go ahead.
Here's a abstract, perverted idea, but I mean, just part of life as well, throughout the century, millennia. What about, since Mars is also sexual energy, what about that being either that with the moon or a Cancer, like some kind of incestuous relationship?
Not necessarily, no.
I'm not saying it's going to be, but just
Mars,
you just said.
usually anybody that, if Mars is in Cancer, it means that the conflict, the deep-seated issues of the mother were somehow tied in with sex, probably, okay? Her own upbringing, her own prudishness, if you forgive me that, but a tendency to see, oh yeah, we're just doing quickies here. I'm just looking at one thing in a chart. When you do a full reading and you start looking at everything, you're looking at all the different influences. I didn't even look to see what other aspects were going on there to that. But let's go back to this. We were doing Mars square and opposition Moon.
Is there any way that we can, I don't have like a chart for the houses and what they each mean, what you're talking about, like you're in the fourth house and that's your person. There's nothing in here for
The
that,
book.
so.
Yeah.
In the book? Okay,
Yeah.
I've only been
Yeah.
reading
A
it
royal,
directly.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, also, like, when you're doing these, what was it we were talking, we're talking about, you're born, by the way, exactly on a new moon too. Is that amazing? Yeah, within a degree of each other, 222, 23. Yours exact same thing, exact new moon. Yeah, indicates integration of the soul and spirit together. But anyway, back to this real quick. I'm trying to get you through some of this. I want you to just think astrologically, okay? You see a Mars, and by the way, you all have a grid on your chart. There's a grid on there. Yeah, and it shows the aspects. So you're going to have to know if it says square is a square, right? Opposition is this. See this symbol here? If you see that form, and it's in red, it's an affliction on that grid. So you can look up those aspects. This week, what I want you to do this next week, what I want you to do is I want you to get familiar with those aspects. Look at your own chart. Write out little things about it, okay? What are my aspects that I have between my planets that are afflictions? And let's look at those and try to interpret them. And then, but let's get this first, Mars squaring Moon. Mars squaring Moon. Do you remember I told you cardinal signs are physical, by the way. I don't know that I told you that. I told you mutable are like my mutable, are mental, more than mental, okay? Likes to run away and all that stuff, okay? Then I told you that fixed were what? Fixed signs? Stubborn. Good student. Stubborn, tenacious. We say stubborn if it's something we don't like they're doing. Yeah, if they graduate from college with high honors and they're tenacious enough to do it, we call that what? Tenacious. That's good. The thing with energies is interesting, and I think Ed's really clicked onto that this week. It's if a child is a bully and pretty rowdy and raising hell all the time and getting in fights, that's bad. But if he grows up and he becomes overthrows a dictator, then you say that's wonderful. It's the same energy, except it's directed a different way. in a positive, maybe, even though it's destructive, a positive way, because he's overthrown somebody. So what I'm saying is everything has a potential for good, for...
And here's the thing, and it's not just that it's being directed, it's perceived. It all depends on what side of the country you're in. If you're in the cabinet, you get overthrown, it's a bad thing. If you're part of the
Public.
impoverished, it's good. So it's the same thing. So maybe that's what life is about. It's really, I mean, I think there's an absolute truth, but it depends. Our truths are relative. It all depends on where you're looking at.
That's right. Yeah, and one of the things that I've learned in life is that, you know, I teach it and I preach it, and I believe it with all my being, that all things work together for good, for them that love God. I believe that. I truly believe it, and I've seen it. I know. But it doesn't happen that it all works together for good for people because they don't know how to make it work for good. And that's why I teach praise and thanksgiving. That's all I teach it. You know, I'd rather see you all become masters of your life and not become a victim to anything in your chart. I don't want you to look at your chart and say, oh my God, I got Saturn doing this and I got that. And I can look in the past and see a lot about you. But that's gone. It's over. What is real important is really right this present, this moment, this now. Yeah? To be in His presence is to be in the present. The more you can be here now, the more powerful you are as a being. The way you know things and are a good student, if you're here now. Think about it. If you're here now, you're listening, you're absorbing, you're picking up everything. If you're worrying about, oh, I got to pick up milk later, and Jesus, I forgot to do this, and you know, my husband's probably thinking, you know, next thing you know, you missed half of what's going on here. So the difference between a good student and as a poor student is the ability to be here now. The word know has what in it? Now. K-N-O-W. You know? So the more powerful. I had experiences when I was in prison. I had experiences that I became so centered in the moment, in the present, that I was brought to literally, I was on my bunk. I remember this experience so much. I had to bring my hands underneath me in a prayerful meaning. And I've never liked praying stuff. To me, it was kind of like, you know, oh, I'm so holy, right? So I've never really done that as a prayer. I did it when I was young. I'd go to church. They'd everybody do this, pray, you know, and all that. But I always felt that it was kind of just showy, you know. And if I want to pray, I don't need to put my hands together. But I was in such awe because I lay before them. I was laying on my bunk, but I was laying before the throne, and I was like going within. And I went layer upon layer till I was laying before a throne of God. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? It put me in an institution with that stuff. But I was laying there, and I had to bring my hands in like this. But I had only got there by being in the present, in the present, perfect presence. And that is hard to be in that place. You can't stay there long because the world pulls you back out of it. And I remember waking, I remember coming out of that experience, and I was so in awe of what I saw. And I remember walking over to my mirror in my cell, and I took some soap, and I wrote, remember, all there is love. Because I understood that concept so powerfully well. And I knew I'd forget it. That's why I wrote that. Remember, all there is love. That's all that's really important. And that means loving yourself and loving others. It's not just a simple thing. Love is, and when you're a bad guy, you're, you know, somebody that's on public record as being a terrible man. To start to learn to love yourself in prison is a challenge, you know, because it's easy to be judgmental and accusing. Get that accusing spirit. We're back to Saturn's energy. Find Saturn, the accuser of our brother, Satan, the devil, the serpent. Okay, so we have to cast that out of our consciousness, and we have to be here in the presence. And to be in His presence, that's the only way to get there. And that means being in the total center of the moment now. And very few people can come to that place. Meditation helps you get there. You know, it's a good way to guide. I've had powerful meditations. But I think that I wrote something up for you guys. And you can do this at home. I kind of digressed to this point, but this is... to all you guys to read in your own time. So here, just pass those out.
Sure.
So this will give you some idea of what will change and transform your life. This is what will make your life totally changed if you put it into action. And
Ron, what is the aspect of Mars opposition, no, square with the sun?
it's,
Because Mars and the sun have a lot to do together.
well, I have that aspect. I have Mars squaring my sun when I was born. And Mercury both. I told you, Mercury is speech. My Mercury was marred. My Mars speech was marred when I was growing up. And what it creates, quite frankly, is very often a quick temper. Because people that have moon square Mars tend to have emotional, deep-seated anger that they don't express. And what happens because they do that? They carry it around all the time. They don't let it out. Sometimes they do. Generally towards a woman, because it's moon, towards a mother or towards a wife. They'll find an outlet for their anger towards them because they have that energy. And it comes out more towards the woman. Mine in a Mars square sun is conscious affliction from Mars. And I'm very quick to, I've always been very quick-tempered. You know, I'm a nice guy, yeah, but you push me and you can push certain buttons, and I don't care whether you're 20 feet tall, you know what I mean? I was always feared in prison, from the worst to the worst. Nobody messed with me. Not because I was big and tough and the strongest guy on the earth, but when I'm raging and you get me to that point, I'm the strongest guy in the world, you know? But the point being that's Mars sun. It's conscious, willful anger, okay? The sun is I will, right? And I will destroy when I'm in that state. That's a dangerous state for me to be in, and I know it. Now, I went through a lot of my years of life thinking how cursed that was, what a curse that was to be. And back to Ed's thing about what's good and what's bad, right? What I found out, I finally look back at it now and I think, thank God for that. Thank God I was born with that. I would have never survived. Yeah, I would have never survived 9 years in prison. I would have never survived if I didn't have that temper. That temper preserved me alive because people knew not to push my buttons. They knew that you can push Ron so far, you know, and that there's a limit. And if you push and go over that line, you know, Mr. Nice Guy is no longer there, you know. So what I'm saying is that who's to say what's good, what's bad? You see, I'm back to that again. As an older person looking back at it, I think, God, thank God for my temper. But now in my life, of course, I don't want to have it. You know, now and then somebody can provoke it, and I wish they hadn't, but yeah.
I was going to say something, actually share something that I've come to understand that this is the case. In regarding to what you were saying about love, I was thinking about saying before you said this, but now you mentioned about anger. I think that the root of negativity is fear. So when somebody's angry, they're actually fearful. When they're insecure, they're fearful. And the opposite of that's going to be love, where you don't have this fear, and therefore you're not going to react to somebody in a negative way because you're basically being defensive. There's
truth to that. I know that there's nothing more dangerous than a fearful person. Nothing more dangerous. And I know in my own life, whenever I've gone to battle with somebody, I feared it, sure, but I didn't care. Because you know what I mean? There's a point where you just, you know, I'm on the warpath and nothing's going to stand between me and what I got to accomplish. But yet to say that what provoked the anger is fear. Somebody has done something or said something that threatens me on some level.
An elephant is the biggest land animal, but yet you see a little dog walking next to it, it'll start getting, charging it, stopping it. Why? Because the elephant's afraid.
Exactly.
What are you going to do, man? I don't know who you are. So, any kind of active, action like that where you're aggressive, it's fear.
Oh, there's no question. And I do know that there's scripture says perfect love casteth out fear. Okay? I know that when I'm in those moments, it's a karmic thing, it's in my chart, I know it's there, and I can be aware of it, and I say, oh yeah, it's there. Why can't I bring that under control? You know? It's taken years for me to bring it under control. And anyway, enough of this. The point is that you asked me about Mars square and the Sun. And the Sun rules the back, Leo, the back. So another problem I've had in my life is lower back problems, okay? Anytime you have an affliction to the Sun, there's a potential for that. Or anything to do with Leo, okay? We're back to the 5th house, Leo and the Sun. Remember, always think in trines, in three things. You're going to always think sign, house, and what? Planet. It rules that out. So when we're talking about Leo, we're talking about fifth house, we're talking about the fifth house, but we're also talking about the sun.
The father.
Huh?
The father, the male.
That's a good one here. That's another thing that I've learned over years. I want to find out about the father. I look to Saturn and the sun. Interesting. Now, really interesting. For example, in my son's chart, my 22-year-old, our son, 22-year-old son, Andre, when he was born, he had his sun, if I recall right, opposed to Saturn. Let me try to remember what this was. The point of this is that Saturn is the stern father. And his Leo qualities of strength and thank you. That's good. I used to make these
Very good assistant to have.
for people that yeah. So yeah, he's got Saturn opposing the sun, and the point being that Leo is the sun and Leo is the will, right? The sun in Leo. He's got not only Leo, but he's got the sun in Leo. And whenever I would try to be the disciplinarian, his will was stronger than my will to punish him. I couldn't turn him over and use a belt on him, never. I couldn't. He was too strong and too, even as a youngster. Today he whipped my butt. He's a big, strong kid. He won first place in New York as a competitive lifter. He's powerful. And plus I brought him up in martial arts. I trained him to kick my ass. So he's been brought up that way. So he's martial arts, he's everything. He's a beautiful kid, and he's a gentle giant. But the point is, knowing that he has that Saturn opposing the sun, we're dealing with the will of his life, his will, opposing any authority that tries to put a limit on him or to discipline him. Saturn disciplines, right? Saturn wants to put limits on somebody. And his will would never submit to it. Whenever I was that person that was trying to be the person of the Saturn-like father that's stern and disciplinarian, I couldn't do it. I really couldn't. So, you know, when you look at a chart, you know, you try to see the father in a chart, you're going to see two aspects. The father that is the Leo, the sun energy only, and the aspects that are making to that sun, and then you're going to see Saturn in that chart. So you're going to look to both of those to try to grab a picture of that father. He may be the most loving and the most beneficial, great person as a father. That's the sun. He may be over strict and too severe, and that's the Saturn. You see what I'm getting at? So the father in a way is both in a chart. He can be the loving, life-giving influence of the sun, and he can be the restrictive disciplinarian. And I was brought up with a lot of abuse. So it's easy for me to think that's the way, you know, I'm supposed to do this with my son, you know. And my wife says that's not the way it's done. You know, we don't.
The sun is, in a certain way, the leadership too, right?
It is, yeah.
So how do you put together Mars and Sun?
If they're in good aspect, you tend to get the will and the energies are directed in positive ways. Mine was very destructive in my life. Mars squaring the sun. My Mars was in the second house. What's the second house rule, everybody? Money, right? And Mars is in Pisces. What's that rule? Anybody got an idea what Pisces rules? Sorrow, self-undoing, and prisons. Did you know that? 12th house, Pisces, Neptune rules sorrow, self-undoing, prisons, and institutions and hospitals. Yeah. And what? Past life, yes, exactly, very good. So all these energies in my chart, I have Mars and Pisces in my second, squaring my Sun and Mercury in the 12th. 12th house rules prisons. My Sun's in that house. Mercury's in that house. My Mars is in Pisces, which rules the 12th house, which is prisons. And it's afflicting my Sun. And it's in Pisces in the second. I was in prison for armed robbery. That's Mars in the second. Armed, Mars, robbery, money, for money. So, I mean, it's
It wouldn't have been the 8th house with someone else's money. That's a joke.
very good, very good. It was my money when I got through. It was my money after I left. Was no longer their money. Anyway, okay, so are we going to, so we did Mars to the Sun. Good, we've done that. We've done Mars to the Moon. By the way, if you have Mars to the Moon and you don't do anything with that anger, guess what it produces?
You mess up your kids.
Well, yeah, but it messes up you.
Well, yeah, you're going to take it out on your kids as well.
What part of the body does the moon rule? Stomach. Oh, you ever heard of ulcers? You know, you keep putting all that stuff in there and not expressing it out, not letting it out. The nice thing with the Mars Sun is that we tend to let it go because it's conscious. I'm angry and I'm going to blow it off, you know. The moon wants to push, stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down. And we keep doing that and eventually we end up with ulcers or maybe worse things, you know. So it also rules the breast. I think that it has something to do with breast cancer. And so it's all tied in. You know, once you start studying astrology, you see medical sides of it. You start to study it and you start to see I mean, there's a book called Stellar Dietetics. It's all about nutrition and foods and things you should take if you have afflictions. And there's so much to this. You'll spend your life, for the rest of your life, never be bored. Because you can always find something to look into and to study and to learn more about it. Okay.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Okay, so the moon is receptive, so then Mars, so we will be allowing ourselves to receive the anger, but the sun is giving out the rays so that the Mars and, if it's negatively, the Mars and sun will be taking out on people.
Well, that maybe, but also Mars to the Sun is. Let me tell you, there's a rule that I learned in astrology from my teacher in prison, and it's one of the best things I ever learned, and that is, if you don't have some inner aspect between Mars and your ascendant ruler, or Mars and the Sun, you usually won't amount to much in life. Oh, everybody's going to grab their chart right now. I see that. But why? Because you need the energy, you need the drive, you need this, you know, the Mars. I have Mars squaring my Sun. I'm very driven, you know. And the more creative I am, the more happy I am because that energy is going to the Sun. What's it do? Creative. I mean, I'm a writer. I love to write. I love to express myself. I wrote this the other night for you guys. I mean, it's just, I sent this out to a few people, and one of them wrote back and said, Ron, this should be made into a little booklet you put it in your pocket and carry around with you all the time because it's a message that will change your life if you really read it and get it. So, anyway. But being creative, okay? And notice I have Mars squaring Mercury. Mercury is the writer. Mercury, to publish a book, to put a book out. All that drives me, that square. So it's not all negative energy. When we say Mars squaring the Sun or Mars squaring Mercury, it moves you on, it drives you, gets you to do things, and gets you into action. So if we do Mars to Jupiter, what that is Jupiter's a little bit more abstract. Jupiter's your optimism. Jupiter's your faith in the future. Jupiter's Jesus. Jesus. Jupiter's your
They need to grow to move on.
exactly.
Very strong.
Yes, and it's the ability to have faith in the future. Where Saturn is the opposite of that. Saturn is depression. Saturn is pessimism. Jupiter is optimism, faith. The greatest Christians are, in my mind, the greatest believers are just optimists. They don't have to have any Bible readings or nothing to do with the church. If they're optimists and they believe in good and they have faith in good, that's faith in God to me. And those people are just as much if you would, Christian, as the guy that goes to church every Sunday and doesn't, reads his Bible every day. So Mars can mar the future. Mars, if it's afflicting, it can cause your future to be obstructed in some way or blocked. Okay? Injured. My future, let's not go there. So each of these planets can be marred. Mars squaring Venus would be what? Come on, guys. Love life can have a lot of pain in it, right? you know? I mean, think about it, you know? You know, there's a great difference between pleasure, which is Mars energy, it's kind of sexual, right? There's a great difference between pleasure and love. You know, pleasure can bring a great amount of pain in life. And when we talk about Mars squaring Venus, we're talking about two opposite energies. Venus is the circle over the cross. Remember we did that last week? And Mars is the cross on top of the circle. You remember we talked about those two?
Yeah.
Venus is the spirit dominating the flesh. Venus is, we say, is women, it's love and all that. But Venus says, let's put love first. And Mars, the masculine energy, Mars says, no, let's get it on. You know, the hell with that. Let's just get it on. You know, spend a night with me, boy, you won't come, you know, you'll be back. But here's the whole point I'm getting at. The energies are in conflict here. So the passions and the love are in conflict. And generally in a woman's chart particularly, there's a lot of conflict that comes from that energy. Okay? Because there's a tendency to feel
Yes, it is.
not loved, well, not to feel not loved, but to be used, you know, sexually, to be always being put upon with that Mars. Huh? Yeah. How's my boy? You been outside? Zeus. Can you sit? Can you sit? Huh? So, okay, and then the next one is,
I feel compelled to say this. They might not want to hear this, but, you know, when you said about the woman being used and things like that, this is what I think. You know, anytime we're used, it's because we allow ourselves to be used.
Well, of course.
Looking for it. So the conflict inside is that the woman's allowing the man to do this, but she's basically looking for it.
no, Zeus. Zeus, get back. Get back. You want to kiss her. So, Zeus, he's going to just say hi to everybody and then he'll go sit down. He's got to go around the room. Isn't that a beautiful? He just,
It's like an orca.
yeah, he says, I wasn't allowed to say hi. I wasn't allowed to do that. Look at this. Look at this. Each person, each one, he's got to say hi and get to smell and just say, I want to say hi. I love you all, and I've been locked in the backyard.
The dog is saying, I know you love me. You're scared of me, so just let me lick you.
Can you sit? Can you sit down? Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Sit. So, okay. So the last one I've got up here is the hardest of them all. You love it because it's in your chart. It's Mars-Saturn affliction. Okay? So when I say affliction, we're talking negatives. We're talking what? We're talking about squares, oppositions, semi-squares. There's another aspect that's, you know, 180 is opposition. If you go 30 degrees either side of that opposition, it's called the quincunx aspect. It's a lot of astrologers, you know, aren't real keen on that aspect and knowing it, but it's as much of an affliction as an opposition or a square. Some ways more fated than them, other aspects. And yes. Oh. Huh? Quincunx, 150 degrees. Is a what? Talented? Like a gift, a talent?
Yeah.
It's called the finger of God if you have two planets doing that to one planet. It's called the finger of God. It's very fated. And one side of it is the sixth house aspect. In other words, if you go here and you go this way, 150 degrees, instead of full opposition, you're at the sixth house energy. If you go this way, it's the death aspect. It's the eighth house aspect. So it tends to bring experiences that can be both, death and sickness, into your life. Not necessarily your death, but it can be something that you have to deal with that has impacted your life quite a bit. And that's why it's called the finger of God. It's a very fated energy aspect. Some people have, it's called a yod, Y-O-D, like a Y, yod. So I don't want you to get caught up in these aspects right now because let's kind of just stay with energies. I want you to learn the aspects. The more you study your workbooks and you studied your textbook, you're going to learn all this very quickly. But you should, by now, have a strong sense of these energies, just from what we've done in this room. I mean, here's Mars trine the Sun. Instead of, these are afflictions here. Okay, these are trines and sextiles. Sextiles 60 degrees, good aspect. Trines 120. A lot of you have good trines in your chart, nice trines. Very powerful trines.
Can we go back to Saturn with the Mars and
Oh, we didn't do Mars Saturn. Keep me,
Oh, that's
keep
right,
me,
I was just
keep me
saying.
going there. Good. We
Okay.
we talked a lot about this before, but we'll do it again because it's one of the hardest aspects. I tell women, if you're going out with a guy, do his chart. If he has 3 things, be careful. Be careful.
I'm writing these down.
Yeah, we're gonna send. We're gonna put room. We're gonna put Ed in the back room now after we talk about it.
Pretty well.
But
No wonder I just said something about 10 minutes ago.
I know you should. But here's the thing with this aspect. This is, I'm not so much with Mars and Saturn. Mars and Saturn, my wife has Mars Saturn affliction. It's powerful when a person's got discipline and energy to spare. That's my wife. That's Ed. They have the same energy in their charts. Very disciplined energy. It forces you to either use it or become depressed and angry, quite frankly. Mars is anger and Saturn's depression. If you don't take that square and put it into something like the gym, working out, yoga in my case of my wife, or working out, she works out daily. She goes to the gym almost every day. And she needs that. If she doesn't, she gets irritable and depressed. What a wonderful thing to know about your mate. Isn't that nice? To be able to say, geez, I'll make sure you got a gym membership, right? I'll make sure she's got a gym membership. And I don't complain that she... Yeah, there you go. You know, get yourself out of here and go work out a little bit. Because if you do that, you're dealing with an energy in a positive way. And she knows she needs it. She's always known that. Without a chart, she's always known that. She danced, she's a figure skater, she's done all that all her life. She's done all these physical things. And she's very physical. So look at this guy. He's got the same aspect. And they're born actually the same year and close to the same month. Same days almost.
What day?
May 5th and 16th, same year, Doug.
Yeah, saying that's pretty well.
So those aspects are in that. They don't change. You know, there are a lot of people with that.
Now, these people are very sick.
Yeah,
Both of them.
yeah, they really are. Yeah, yeah. And then you got me. So, but here's the point I'm getting at in these aspects. When I talk about trines now, we're talking about positive energies between these. The only thing wrong with trines, if I say wrong here, you know, I'm turning a positive into a negative. How can I do that, Ron? Well, here's what it is. Trines, if you get a lot of them, can make you lazy.
Lay back person.
You laid back. Everything comes too easy. Okay? And when I see a lot of, I've seen people with the Star of David in their chart. You know what that is? 2 double grand trines interlaced. Think about it, what a Star of David is. It's a grand trine, and put another one in and put it the opposite. But guess what that has in it? Look at this, folks. You want to know why the Jewish people have suffered so much?
Yeah, it's opposite contradiction.
Watch this. You know what this is? Opposition, opposition, opposition. 3 opposition. You know what that's called? You know what a 6-sided figure is called? Good. What's a hex? You ever had a hex?
Oh, hex, yeah, that'd be first.
Ever had a hex put on you?
That's pretty well.
Guess what?
Yeah,
That's where it comes from?
interesting.
Huh? Does it make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
Nobody will tell you that. See, that's what. So you say, well, why they adopt that symbol? You know, it's fated. They had that. You know, that's the nation.
Big karma.
It's
Say
big.
when you made that phone call.
The what?
Say when you made that phone call to Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, whatever. It's part of your
Oh,
your chart.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So what we see in these, there's so many mysteries within mysteries. The more you study astrology, it'll open you up to the deeper, profound mysteries of life. It really will. It'll show you so much. I hope you'll read my book. I really hope. My book will blow you away, I promise. That sounds terribly egotistical, but it will. It's been reviewed by some of the top scholars in the world, one of which said it should be compulsory reading for everybody. The book will change your life if you read it and really get it, okay?
This is the book you gave me?
No, that's over there, yeah. Yeah, that book will do. And the CDs, I recommend them. It's hard, but they're powerful lectures. Ed bought them. You had them all, right?
I heard them like in the first 3 days. So,
Yeah. So they'll change your life too. You know, the messages are very metaphysical, but you know, what is metaphysics? You know, think about it. It's the magic behind the physics of life, the things that make the physical happen. Emerson was an amazing metaphysician. You know, I quote him a lot in my book even. He's a master of understanding about how we create our own realities. So enough of that.
So you had said three things, so look for it. So what
Good.
was it? Yeah, I'm going back, sorry. Mars, it was like someone said Mars.
Oh, I said about guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Secretary.
Yeah, yeah. We told Ed he had to leave the room first. But no, here's the three things.
Let's cap on that.
If you have anybody that has Mars, Saturn, Pluto afflictions, all of those together. Now, you might have Pluto afflicted, but if they're all together in afflictions, in other words, Mars, maybe it's on a T-cross or, you know, they're all afflicting each other. Beware. I guarantee you, beware.
They are violent, aggressive people.
And maybe, yeah, it can be, it's jealousy, it's controlling. Saturn's very controlling. Saturn is also always sees the dark side. You know that you're probably doing something you shouldn't. You know, very jealous. Mars is anger, quick to anger there, and Pluto can be deadly. Pluto can be death. Okay, and I've seen that. You got to remember, I spent 9 years in prison looking at people's charts that have done some terrible things, and I got a lot of insights into these energies. So, you know, Mars, Saturn doesn't have to be negative, but it can be. I know, you know, I mentioned, some of you know Sherry, so I got to be. So, but her sister, years ago, she just ordered another chart yesterday. I told you, she told her not to sign any papers. She already signed them. I couldn't believe that. What'd she call me for? You know, why couldn't she wait? I just put it in the mail. I said, why'd you call me? Why'd you wait? You know, you're going to get hurt real bad here if you don't stop it. Try to get it out of it. But 3 or 4, maybe 3 years ago, when I first did her chart, she was complaining she had no relationships. She was 50 years old. I'll never find any, you know, but 60 years old. And she's got Venus rising. I know she's a beautiful woman, very attractive. Venus rising gives that. And but I said, you're going to have 2 lovers. So I talked to her yesterday, and I said, how's the things going with Ron and JR? Oh, I'm with them both still. I said, they're both still in your life. And I told her JR was going to be very hard to live with because he's very controlling, very jealous, and he's non-forgiving because he had Saturn afflicting Mars real bad. And that can be that, okay? You have that aspect, but you can deal with it because you're very open about yourself.
I'm proud of it.
Yeah, you know, but you're open. You know, you're open.
Sign my chart. Not the negative stuff, but the negative growth.
Yeah,
stuff.
no, but what you said one day, you said I can be very jealous. Remember you said that?
No, I can be very possessive.
Possessive.
Not jealous.
Yeah.
Jealous is I think something's happening.
Yeah.
You know, and my ego's too big to think it's going to happen. You know what I mean? So.
That Leo rising gets in there all the time. Tell me you have Leo rising. Anything else but Leo. Anyway, enough. We got to make sure you get the right chart. But but where was I going with that? He gets me thrown off.
The 2 lovers.
Oh, yeah, the shares.
Oh yeah, that she would have too. So here it's been 3 years later. She's still got 2 lovers there, and she said, I just met another guy just last week. We've been on 4 dates. I said, now that's three guys, and you know she'll keep them all on the line too. I tell you. But but anyway, I was telling her about JR. I said JR is going to be very stubborn and very suspicious of you, and he's going to be very possessive, and he's going to be the type of person that anything you do wrong, he's not going to forgive, right? So I call her one time and says, I was thinking, JR's here. I said, can you talk? She says, yeah, I'm very upset with him. He went through my phone, got all my messages, found out about James. About Ron Ryder. He didn't know about Ron, right? And she says, you know, Ron's just a great lover, but you know, he's not a future for me. But anyway, so I shouldn't talk about clients. But the point being that, yeah, I'm on YouTube. I'm going to get in real trouble with that YouTube stuff. But yeah, but what I'm saying is that what we have energies that are expressing themselves in a chart. And sometimes people say, well, I'm just too old. I won't find any mate at this time in my life. It's, that's not true. Your chart can promise a lot of things, no matter what your age is. It doesn't matter whether you're 50 or 60. And, the possibilities in a chart don't stop just because we reach a certain age. And that's what I think is the promise of astrology. It provides a lot of opportunities for you to keep growing and nurturing those needs that you have. But if we're looking at these aspects, Mars to the moon, for example, in good aspect, we have a really different energy here. We have somebody that has an emotional drive that is powered by Mars now. And it's very feminine energy. It's the moon, the mother. It's a very maternal energy. It's very nurturing, by the way. A person like that. And let me tell you one other thing about the moon. We talk about people in successful positions and all these things. The moon is very often the public. It represents the public. People who have strong moons can be very influential in affecting public changes in the public way. And we didn't go on all through this. I'm going to go through these real quick because I want to show you. What time is it? We haven't even had a break. What time is it? I can't read this thing.
8:30.
It's 8:30? So, okay. 6, 7, boy, we've been 2 hours you've been sitting here. Do you want to get a break? Let's take a break. What I'll do is I'm going to move forward on some things here and look at some of the other